Going to call to order the special meeting of the Council of the Town of Ladysmith. The Town of Ladysmith acknowledges with gratitude that this meeting takes place on the traditional territory of the Staminis First Nation. Members of the public may attend meetings in person at the Ladysmith Senior Center or view the live stream on YouTube. I'd like to move to agenda approval. Are there any changes to the agenda, Ms. Bowman? Is it Ms. Bowman or Ms. Tierney?
Yes, Mayor Beeson, the only change right now is we're still waiting for our presenter to join the Zoom meeting. So
All right.
Should be coming shortly.
Okay. I'd like to say welcome back. We're really happy to see you looking so hale and hearty.
Thank you.
And we've missed seeing your smiling face. So.
Thank you.
You should be able to go ahead now.
Okay, thank you very much. Wonderful. Oops. Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Worship. I'll walk through some slides if I may, and then I'm happy to participate in some discussion with Council as well. My name is Alan Nielsen, first of all. Thank you very much for having me here at Council with you. I work as a local government consultant. I've had the pleasure of working with Ladysmith in the past, and I've done a fair bit of work with the Cowichan Valley Regional District on a number of files. This current file is the economic development function, and I've been asked to do a review of the function. My presentation consists of 4 different parts. The first is I'll just talk a little bit about the assignment I've been asked to do. I'll then give a bit of context, that is context for the service as it's delivered in the Cowichan Valley. Some preliminary findings to share with Council will be the third part, and then finally some discussion. And for the discussion, I've got a couple of questions posed, not to limit discussion, but simply to prompt some thinking and perhaps to guide some thoughts as well. With respect to the assignment, as I mentioned, it is an economic development service review. So I've been asked to review the function, which we know as Economic Development Cowichan. It's the Cowichan Valley Regional District's Economic Development Office for all intents and purposes. As part of my review, I've been asked to assess the existing services. So what's the value that they provide to the region as a whole and to the member jurisdictions? I've been asked to identify the potential changes to the scope of services and the level of services. And then finally, I've been asked to consider and to advise on the delivery model. So right now, Economic Development Cowichan is provided as an in-house service with staff of the CVRD and within the CVRD organization. There are other models available to provide this service, and so I'll be looking at all those different alternatives. In terms of the context, that is the context of the environment within which, or the set of factors within which this particular service is provided to the region. And I should mention it is a true regional service in the sense that all jurisdictions participate in the service. That includes the town of Ladysmith. So the context, we're dealing with a large region. This is no surprise to Council, of course, with a number of different jurisdictions, 9 electoral areas, a number of municipalities. We've got a distinctive rural urban character. We've got a range of needs that are consistent with those changes or those differences between rural and urban communities. And we've got a range of interests and expectations as well. Some of those expectations are on the part of the municipalities, some are on the part of the electoral areas, and some are on the part of some other stakeholder groups, if you will, or other agencies that are involved in some aspect of economic development. Another part of the context, we've got different understandings among all those different groups of exactly economic development and what it is. So what is this service? What does it do? We've got tight and increasingly tight or tightening budgets. No surprise again to Council or any other jurisdiction in the area. And those budgets and the pressure on budgets result in competition for resources, not only competition within the organization, the CVRD organization, but also competition for resources that the jurisdictions may need to allocate to their different services. And we've got a service that is inherently difficult to measure. So economic development is typically one of those services that it can be very difficult to draw a straight line from cause and effect, between cause and effect. An investment made today may not pay off for some time, or it may pay off, but we may not be able to exactly attribute a particular outcome to an investment that was made. So we've got some inherent difficulties in measuring that. We've got a relatively limited service. It's about $750,000, which may not sound terribly limited, but for a region the size of Cowichan Valley, it is quite limited. It's limited in terms of budget, and it's also limited in terms of staffing. We've got about 3 FTEs involved in the service. And then finally, we've got a very developed and diverse economic development ecosystem. And what I mean by that ecosystem is we've got a number of different agencies. You've got your Chamber of Commerce, we've got business improvement areas, we've got First Nations economic development agencies throughout the Cowichan Valley. We've also got a number of provincial and federal agencies that are involved in some aspect of economic development. So we've got quite a diverse ecosystem. They've got varying capacities across that ecosystem. And so some are very much independent and quite powerful. Others are a little bit less so. The review that I'm doing so far has involved quite a bit of research, including interviews with every member of the board and with many representatives of the different agencies that are active in the Cowichan Valley. I've spoken with the Ladysmith BIA and the Ladysmith Chamber of Commerce, and I've spoken with you, Mayor, as well, in your capacity as a board director. One of the things that the board asked me to do when I presented these findings about a month ago to the board was to reach out and meet with each of the councils. And so that's what I'm doing this evening with Ladysmith. Some of the findings from the research undertaken, and there was not only the interviews, but also some research of information and materials on the service, are as follows. First of all, we've got considerable uncertainty about what exactly economic development Cowichan does and what it is. Some folks understand it to be an economic development service focused on what might be considered more regional economic development functions, convening tables, undertaking research, advocating with other levels of government for particular investments, those kinds of things. Others see economic development Cowichan as more of a local agency, connecting with individual businesses, understanding the needs of individual businesses, lobbying for those individual businesses, doing house calls, if you will, with individual businesses, those kinds of things. So a lot of uncertainty about what it is and what it does. And others are just not clear exactly where it fits in the broader system of services provided by the region. Another finding is that we discovered that on the whole, the directors of the regional board and then the jurisdictions too, the councils, have felt a less than optimal role in setting the priorities and giving the direction. So it is a regional district service. It is priorities for the service are ultimately set by the board of directors of the regional district, and directors in that capacity have felt that they haven't quite had the input that they would like in terms of setting those priorities. I will just pause there for a second and note that there is a new strategic plan for the service that is being released in draft soon. That strategic planning process reached out and met with a number of different groups. And I'll be curious to know if the town of Ladysmith Council had any input into that process. Another finding is we've got a broad scope of services at both the regional and the local level, and there's a need to tighten that focus. So a moment ago, I outlined a number of different services that tend to be provided at a regional level, again, convening tables, undertaking research, looking at attracting investment to a broad region, understanding different sectors and looking to build different sectors across a regional economy, those kinds of broad regional level services. We've also got local ones, and I talked about those that are more focused on specific communities or specific businesses. We've got a little bit of both within economic development Cowichan, which means that we're doing quite a bit, and which also means that we may want to sharpen that focus to be really clear on what it is we can do and what it is we can do well with the resources we have. I talked about the regional economic development efforts, and what I found in my research and my interviews with directors and with others, with agencies, is those regional economic development efforts, again, I noted those a moment ago, are supported as being very helpful, very valuable by many people in by many of the stakeholder groups in the Cowichan Valley, including the directors of the regional board. There's less certainty around the local functions, and that's not surprising in the sense that we have a regional service. And as a regional service that is obligated to serve the entire region, we would anticipate that that body would focus on services that benefit or perceive to benefit the entire region, that provide value to the entire region. And so we see that a little bit in our feedback. One of the other points we found is that the sector focus is strongly supported in some cases. So in agriculture, for example, the efforts of the Economic Development Council to really help to build capacity in the agriculture and agri-food and agri-tourism sector are meeting with some support. Not as much in other sectors, such as tech, for example. Folks feeling that it's not quite led in there. When we look at some of the specific services that Economic Development Council provides and some that are most valued, we see that the kind of the intelligence or the knowledge gathering, the advocacy, the coordination, the convening the tables, the partnering, all of those are considered to be quite important. And Economic Development Council gets a lot of kudos from different agencies in the Cowichan Valley for convening those tables, for creating those partnerships, for advocating for the region as a whole, developing positions for the region and advocating those positions. One of the points that we found relates a little bit to the service delivery model. I mentioned earlier that Economic Development Council is provided as a service of the regional district by the regional district. And so we have an in-house delivery model for that service. It was emphasized in the discussions I had, at least some, that oversight of the service and integration of that service with other aspects of the Cowichan Valley Regional District are considered important to most of the folks I spoke to, not all, but most. And that finding, as I mentioned, really informs the discussion on the delivery model. And so it would suggest that if we're looking for the ability to provide oversight to the service from the political level, and we're looking for the ability to really integrate this service with planning, with a number of different other regional services, then having that service continue as an in-house service may be the preferred option. We heard that communication to the board and also to the member municipalities is important to address. And when I say important to address, important to really elevate a little bit so that the board and the member jurisdictions really have a good sense, the municipalities have a good sense as to what Economic Development Council is providing, what it's producing, what it's bringing to the table, what some of the opportunities are to participate in some of the events and some of the functions and services that Economic Development Council is offering. And then finally, I should say that, I beg your pardon. Finally, one of the comments that I heard quite a bit in my discussions with folks is that it's great to have economic development services available and provided across the region, but it's equally important to look at the other things that we're doing as a regional government, and perhaps even at the local level. This may apply to some of the municipalities, and understand what some of those what things could constitute barriers that we want to reduce in order to allow economic development Cowichan to really excel. And so if we have as a barrier, for example, different policies on where we can set up different businesses, or the types of development approval processes we're going to have and how efficient those are, we're going to want to look at those barriers. And in addition to finding ways to support economic development Cowichan and to sharpen its focus, find ways to remove barriers where we can to economic development. Your worship, that gives a bit of an overview of some of the findings to date. Work is going on. There's another month and a half or 2 months of actually, I beg your pardon, at least 2 months of work to be done on this particular project before I report back to the board. But as I mentioned, the board felt it was important to reach out to the individual municipalities as key partners in this service and participants in the service, and get a sense from the municipalities about the municipalities' views with respect to economic development Cowichan and the services they receive and the services they might want to receive. So I have 2 questions here just to frame a little bit of discussion. Again, not to limit it, so we don't have to stick to do these questions, Your Worship, but I'll mention them here. One is, do you feel, and that is that, does the town of Ladysmith Council feel that economic development Cowichan provides value to the town as a regional district economic development service? And then second, what are the types of activities on which the Economic Development Council as a regional service should be focusing its resources? And I'll pause there.
Thank you. Any discussion, Councillor Patterson?
Thank you for your presentation. Actually, I have a few questions. The first one being, is the economic development, are you looking at anything in ways of assisting the forestry sector in the Cowichan Valley? Because it used to be the largest economic driver in the area, and now the mills are shutting down. I'm not sure if Chemainus is starting up. The local mill is off and on again. What is Economic Cowichan doing for the forestry sector, and are they assisting them in dealing with the province?
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much through Mayor Beeston to Councilor Patterson. Thank you for that. It is yes. When we look at the areas of focus for economic development Cowichan, one of those areas of focus is different economic sectors, and within that focus area, we have value-added wood manufacturing as part of that. So there's that aspect for the forestry. I quite agree that particularly in this era, and we saw the Prime Minister make some commitments on softwood lumber today, particularly in this era right now, this industry is going to need some care and attention as it has for some time, and we're going to continue that. So I think that an area that Economic Development Cowichan has started to work in a little bit around value-added products is something that there may be a need for more attention to that sector. Whether that be convening tables around opportunities in forestry, whether it be looking at positions to advocate for different assistance programs to different levels of government, the province, for example, in particular, or whether it's redoubling some of its efforts on the wood manufacturing of value-added items there. So they are doing some. The question is, could or should they be doing more? And that's a legitimate point to raise for sure.
Okay, just well, I guess on forestry in a way because it requires wood. Economic development Cowichan, do you classify residential development and residential growth as part of the, I guess, mandate? And how do you drive that or lack of it? And is there impediments to it?
Excellent questions. Thanks again through to Councillor Patterson. The residential development is not per se kind of a focus, a target of Economic Development Cowichan, a direct target that is. It would benefit, however, though there would be increased residential development and frankly other types of development too, if some of the other efforts of Economic Development Cowichan bear fruit. And so what I mean by that is Economic Development Cowichan as a regional body will, and most regional economic development bodies do this, will focus their energies on looking at how to drive investment to an area. So that investment could be in the form of investment into a particular economic sector. So forestry, as you mentioned, or it could be in the tech, or it could be in agri-foods, agri-tourism, those kinds of things. It could be in supporting some big capital investments that have come to the area already. So looking at workforce housing was an area that Economic Development Cowichan looked at. It could be all of these different things, all of these different convening tables, and looking at understanding the economic trends, developing products, developing information resources so that companies looking to invest in Vancouver Island can look at the Cowichan Valley and consider the opportunities in the Cowichan Valley. So all of that activity is designed to bring investment into the Cowichan Valley. To the extent that those activities succeed in bringing in investment, we're going to see growth. We're going to see growth in all the different sectors, including the residential housing sector. So that's kind of a little bit of a long-winded answer to say that while it's not a direct target, we would expect to see residential housing increases as a result of some of the efforts by Economic Development Cowichan to drive investment to the region. One of the the other ways to kind of look at economic at residential housing development is more from a local perspective, whether it be municipality or electoral area, where we're looking at development approval processes and how we can ensure that those are streamlined, all the barriers are removed, they create incentives for housing to occur. That's kind of once there's a demand for housing, once housing projects are ready to come forward, to get to the point of bringing those projects forward again, driving that investment into the area is what creates that growth, which in turn then creates the need for housing.
Thank you, Councillor Mackay.
Thank you. I am hearing lots of theoretical discussion and lots of ideas and beginning to build a better understanding of what economic development couching is about. Can you provide us with a specific example of how ECDEV couching is in fact directly impacting Ladysmith? And I ask this because all too often, what's considered the regional approach or the region, the Cowichan region, we all know too well that a lot of that service, a lot of the things that go on happen far south of us. And we, in fact, are kind of the lonely stepsister. So I'm looking for a specific example, if you can, in your adventuring through your interviews and all the rest of it, your understanding of the service. Can you give us an example of exactly how we're benefiting this, and as opposed to us giving you the examples, because we've had two sort of examples from Councillor Patterson and I'm not seeing any direct lines. Can you provide us with a direct line examples? Is that possible?
Thank you for the question to Councilor McKay. No, I can't provide you with a direct to the town of Ladysmith in particular. The value from a regional service to an individual municipality is going to be more indirect, in the sense that if we look at some of the things that Cowichan Economic Development Cowichan does, for example, providing intelligence to existing businesses, primarily in existing sectors, on how to navigate tariffs and the uncertainty around tariffs. Everybody in the region, in theory at least, is going to benefit from that, including businesses in the town of Ladysmith. Is it directed exactly at Ladysmith? No, it's directed at a bigger service area. Another one is workforce housing, looking at how to remove barriers and create incentives to build more workforce housing. Is that going to benefit only Ladysmith or solely Ladysmith? No. Is it going to look at a bigger area? Yes. Will Ladysmith benefit? That's questionable. I designed to benefit, but I'll leave that up to council. Agricultural partnerships. That's going to be something I'm going to suggest is going to be a little bit more outside of Ladysmith than the areas surrounding Ladysmith, but looking at building this sector with in partnerships with VIU, for example. They've got some investment going to the province of BC, looking at building agricultural, the agriculture industry, agritourism opportunities. So it's the work of economic development Cowichan is more at a higher level, looking at sector development, looking at providing resources that benefit broad service areas rather than specific jurisdictions or businesses in those jurisdictions. That said, Economic Development Cowichan had a program in place of doing business visits throughout the region. I know from talking with your chamber and talking with the BIA, some of that has occurred at the local level. But other than that, most of the work of the regional services at that higher level to benefit the broader area.
You have a follow-up?
Yeah, sorry. And you mentioned, and thank you for your answer. I appreciate that. You mentioned agriculture, and that is the one area that I am aware of the impact of the ECDEV work that's gone on in the past. There's no impact from the agricultural side of it, you indicated, and my understanding of it would be as well, sort of specifically in our municipality. Is that correct?
I would think that's probably a correct statement. Yes.
Thank you.
In the direct impact. I mean, we need to always keep in mind the argument, at least, that any investment in the region is going to build the regional economy. But it's up individual jurisdictions are going to feel that differently, and they're going to feel that in different ways.
Any further questions? Nope. Oh, Ms. Councillor Stevens.
I got the nudge from Councillor Jacobson. So I don't know quite where to look. I'll look this way. In terms of the conversation that's just gone on, I think that would have been my impression. I'm glad other folks spoke first, that we don't receive direct benefits that I could think of. Larger, higher level ones in terms of data collection and analysis, I think we would benefit from. I don't know where to put the value equation, honestly. I think I've seen 6 or 8 presentations over my 2 terms, and I'm always polite, but I'm always left with a little what's in it for us. I guess having said that, I have 2 questions, maybe one to my colleagues and one to staff. I recall those 6 meetings. I also remember a session where we were asked about workforce housing and the redesign of CHA into a housing corporation and such. I don't recall us being asked about the strategic plan, so I'm putting that out to my colleagues to if I'm forgetting. And the other thing was maybe through to staff. Like one example I thought is our part of our economic development strategy is recreational mountain biking, and we've recently secured money to move on with that. I don't know whether economic development Cowichan is something a resource we would go to, but if not, I sure think that in the future, because our capacity is limited and it's our development services department, not our own economic development service that's doing it, if some capacity could flow towards us in terms of specialization, if it does, that's great. If it doesn't, and you're looking for future designs of how to run the organization, I think that would be beneficial. So thank you.
Okay, and quickly, Councillor Jacobson.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I did have some questions about the mountain biking, that arm of tourism and development that we're looking at. But I was also wondering if you have had any feedback from businesses, I guess throughout the Cowichan, the CVRD, as how the effects of the changes on short-term rentals have been felt throughout the business community, and if you have perhaps any numbers or any feedback that reflects on Ladysmith directly.
Thank you, Councilor Jacobson, for the question. I'm afraid I don't have feedback. I haven't heard that feedback from individual businesses or the associations that represent them. So I've talked to the chambers throughout the area. I've talked to the business improvement areas. I haven't heard anything about the short-term rentals. I am happy to look into that and see if I can find some numbers and see if there's at least,
Yeah, that would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we have to leave
couch
you
and
here.
everyone together and what the implications are for Ladysmith. So I can get.
Oh.
Sorry. Yes.
Okay, I think we have to leave this here. Thank you very much, Mr. Nielsen, for coming in tonight.
Thank
I
you.
hope your flight goes well. And
Thank you,
it
Your
would
Worship.
be great to get some feedback from you on some of the questions that council raised.
Certainly will do that. Thank you for having me for this brief time. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
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 Okay, we have, I believe, no new business in this, so we'll move on to adjournment. Can I get a motion? Councillor Jacobson and seconded by Councillor Mackay. And all in favor? Motion carries. None opposed. Okay, and we are going to move right into our regular meeting of the Town of Ladysmith Council for Tuesday, August 5th. I call this meeting to order, acknowledging with gratitude that it takes place on the traditional territory of the Staminis First Nation. For agenda approval,
Yes.
we got any changes?
Yes, Mayor Beeston, we have. A late agenda item was circulated to council earlier today containing the following changes to the agenda. For item 5.11, the Town of Ladysmith Streets and Traffic Bylaw 1998, number 1309, Amendment Bylaw 2025, number 2212. We are going to remove that from the agenda to allow for additional revisions prior to its introduction later on. And then the following additions. For item 6.1, we have added the Binney Consulting Traffic Operations Review Report link, as well as excerpts as background information. And for item 6.2, the request for reconsideration of denied water leak bill adjustment. This is a new agenda item, which has been included with the correspondence appealing the decision. And the previous resolution that Council passed in July has been included in the late agenda item for your reference. So hard copies of this late agenda memo are at the meeting tonight, and a copy has been posted on the website as well.
Thank you. With that, can I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Councillor Jacobson, seconded Councillor Stevens. Is that you? Okay. And all those in favor? And none opposed, motion carries. Our minutes of the regular council meeting held July 22nd. Are there any errors or omissions in the minutes this evening? Seeing none, can I have a motion to approve the minutes? And we have Councillor Jacobson and seconded by Councillor Gurley. And all those in favor? None opposed, motion's carried. So moving into reports, 4.1, 2025.6.27 remedial action. S78 request for reconsideration, 324 Morgan Road. Recommendation that council, pursuant to section 78.3 of the community charter, A, provide an opportunity for the owner of parcel A, being consolidation of lots A and B, see CA 3693354, District Lot 42, Oyster District Plan, EPP 17717, 324 Morgan Road, to make representations to council requesting that council reconsider the remedial action requirements imposed at the May 20th, 2025 council meeting. B, amend resolution CS 2025-133 by replacing item 2AV with receive building permits for any buildings or structures found to be within the riparian area. And C, confirm continued support for resolution CS 2025-133 as amended. Can I get a motion? Councillor Jacobson, seconded Councillor Gurley. Discussion? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess a question through to staff, and not understanding legalese stuff. But on page 28 of our agenda, the report from Coast Geotechnical, we go down to under subject, we conducted a brief desktop study, available relevant background information, etc., etc. Last paragraph, we identified no elements at risk of life loss or property damage, such as buildings or pedestrian infrastructure. So if we have, and I take it this applies to what we're asking to do to the front of the property. If we have, and then over on the next page, the 1, 2, 3, 4, considering the angle of repose, whatever that is, seepage conditions anticipated ongoing, they say that the possibility of anything happening is very slim. So with this report from a Coast Geotechnical, what are we asking the property owner to do that this would address?
I believe if you go to table, get back to the right page, 3, the individual points that they're looking for are requiring that he's requesting that we rethink the container issue, or the container issue, that we allow the riparian area to remain as it is existing, and that we extend the existing 121-day time limit. So those are his current requests that be done. The response from staff was that they did not feel that there is a possibility of doing the containers because they do not fit within the current bylaws. The riparian area is not something that, if through the staff, it's my understanding, we don't even have the right to determine that. That's provincial legislation that we are trying to fall within. But that the existing 120-day time limit is something that we could
I understand the
consider.
container and everything,
Yeah.
but this report from Coast Geotechnical
Yeah.
is dealing, I believe, with riparian. So,
No, it's dealing with the stability. There's two issues. There's the stability issue from the changes and improvements to the roads and the property itself. The riparian is actually the culverts and the forested area and the bushes and things like that. If is that correct, staff?
Through the chair. Yeah, you are correct. It's essentially two separate items. So the report from the geotech is speaking to the stability alone. It's not speaking to the riparian area. That would be from a QEP, qualified environmental professional, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, I would not consider those, or I wouldn't consider the geotechnical report at all when you're thinking about the riparian area.
okay. That answers that question. Doesn't, but anyways.
Okay, Councillor Gurley.
I think the time, extending the time limit beyond the 120 days is perfectly reasonable. Despite the arguments presented here, there seems like a lot of good progress made on remediating these contraventions, and I think we can extend more. I'd be fine with that. Maybe through to staff, if we were to do that, would we need an amendment to the motion that we have right now?
Yes, we would.
Okay. Well, I would propose
Okay.
an amendment to add, to go to 240 days total.
Yeah. Can I get a second? Seconded by Councillor Pattison. Any discussion on the amendment? All those in favor? None opposed, motion carries. So the original question will be amended. So we're back to discussing that. I'll give you a minute to put that together, Ms. Boma. And any further discussion, Councillor Mackay?
Thank you. I guess part of what's disturbing me most, I recognize that there have been some efforts made to do some of the changes, and there have been some efforts made to reassure that there's no unsafe circumstances. Unfortunately, I believe one of the biggest issues, if I'm not mistaken, through to staff, is the containers that have been altered, and the fact that in the containers there are, I suppose it's machinery or vehicles that have gas, and there's a problem with inadequate ventilation. Is that accurate through to staff?
Through the chair, that is accurate. And that's just one of the one of the problems that we are considering here. That's not the one the one thing we're looking at. It's multi-layered, for example, and it should be noted in our report that there's several things we're worried about or think are contraventions.
So just to make sure that because I have had a look at it, and unfortunately there aren't any pictures included in the proponent's report or letter to us that shows the containers. Unfortunately, those are not included in this, which I think is interesting. If I remember correctly, there are containers that are stacked on top of each other, and they have openings cut through them, and they're being used as shelters. Is that accurate from your observation?
That's somewhat accurate. Essentially, there's 6 shipping containers on the property. Of those 6, there's 2 separate buildings essentially that are, it's hard to describe, I guess. It's 2 buildings, each made up of 2 shipping containers that are combined. So each set essentially has walls cut through the containers to make it into one large building. So that covers 4 shipping containers. There's 2 other shipping containers that are separate, and they aren't together, they're separate from each other. One is supporting a shelter that covers over an RV, and the other is supporting essentially a sauna slash deck on the roof of the container, and you access it through, I guess, a ramp that's above the surface below.
So just a final follow up. And there's no evidence of any kind of official engineering or building permits or any kind of formalities have gone through to put these buildings, essentially 2-story buildings, in place. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Gurley?
So I grew up on a farm, and we had a bunch of shipping containers that we did all kinds of wacky stuff with and had all kinds of crazy things in them. And that's kind of how it goes in certain regions of the island. Like, you go into Deep Barrington and people have got shipping containers stacked in all kinds of crazy ways and all kinds of, I don't even know if there wasn't zoning in there for many years. So I get why people do this out in the world, but that's not how it's been done in Ladysmith, and I can appreciate that there's a bylaw in place. The owner did point out that there are a bunch of shipping containers in town, and he said that that's kind of unfair, which is not wrong. So my question to the staff is, why are there so many shipping containers all over the place, and what can be done about that? Is there any way that, are these ever permitted? Like, is there a permitting process, temporary, even if it may be? And can we just kind of bring this double standard into alignment?
Through the chair, the directive from council is to enforce bylaws on a complaint basis. This property received a complaint that required us to investigate, and that's where we identified this issue. In this particular case, and the reason for the remedial action order and section 57 notice is that the containers in this case have been altered to a point where they're not necessarily functioning as containers anymore. They're actually functioning as buildings. And because containers are not designed for that, it actually poses a pretty significant hazard. The example in the report was the death of firefighters as a result of an explosion in the Okanagan. So that is why in this particular case the enforcement action is fairly strict. If council would like us to commence enforcement against properties that do have containers without that in zones that do not allow them, we do have zones where they are allowed. We can certainly undertake those efforts.
I'm just going to, through to staff, just a quick follow-up question on that. Are there any allowances for the shipping containers that are used for moving? Because I noticed some of the pictures of the containers were in fact you pack it, they deliver it to your new house, you have 2 to 3 days to unpack it, they come and pick it up. Do you know if those exist in some way because they are a specific commercial entity, that they would exist outside of the container law?
Through the chair, in that case, we would interpret the zoning bylaw to treat those containers as more of a chattel involved in moving. The example would be, or an analogous example is, we don't allow lumber storage in residential zones, but if you stack a lift of 2x4s there because you're building a home, we don't send bylaw out to issue fines. So that's typically how we would treat those scenarios, in that those containers come from licensed companies, they have logos on them, you can only have them for a certain amount of time. If they did remain in place for like 60 days or an extended period of time, then the town, might consider bylaw enforcement action. But generally speaking, those containers are there and gone before we would have an issue.
Thank you for that clarity. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mayor. And I know it's not this particular subject we're dealing with, but you can thank Councillor Gurley for bringing it up, because I had the same question after the last hearing and was told by staff that we act on complaint. So I'm just wondering if in this package, all these pictures and addresses of particular containers, would that suffice as a complaint by this gentleman?
Through the chair, no, we have a very specific bylaw complaint process. There's a form. If this gentleman wishes to fill out those forms and file a formal complaint against those property owners, he is welcome to do so.
And just an aside, he did actually specify quite clearly that he did not mean any of these to be put forward as complaints. So, did you have a follow-up, Councillor Patterson? Okay, Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. I too noted the pictures. I also noted that depending on how you count, 6 of 8 or 6 of 9 are on commercial or institutional properties, and 2 of them I can identify now if you want me to fill out the form, but I don't know if you want to go. I think 1 is related to construction of the 3 residential ones. I won't say any more about the locations, but we are complaint based, and that's the reality. Speaking on that term, I was impressed the first time the proponent here came and spoke. They seemed calm. They had a lot of stuff on their plate, and I think they've remained that way. And I appreciate all the work they've done. But we do have a lot of sort of red herring information. Homelessness is a horrible problem, but it's not the issue here. Other people's storage containers, not a good thing, but it's not the issue here. Whether the geotech thought it was funny that he was having to do the work, not the issue here. We asked the work to be done. The saying, I don't want to complain about my neighbors, but taking pictures without surveys or any real proof of who's what, kind of is ratting them out, quite frankly, in my mind. And I think again is another red herring. These are his shipping containers, his buildings, his excavation efforts, we're talking about this property. And while anyone is welcome to complain about any other property, I think we have to stay focused on that. So I'm quite comfortable to support the resolution. I think an extension, he's taken some time to hope that he would get an extension. I think it's fair enough to give it to him, but I don't think moving on the other conditions is at all unreasonable. And we would in fact be in the position of violating provincial law or our own bylaws, which is never good. So thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay. Do we need to read out the amended bylaw?
Sure, I can do that if you'd like. Okay. So the main motion as amended would read that council pursuant to section 78, section 3 of the community charter provide an opportunity for the owner of parcel A, being a consolidation of lots A and B, C, CA 3693354, district lot 42, Oyster District Plan EPP 17717, 324 Morgan Road, to make representations to council requesting that council reconsider the remedial action requirements imposed at the May 20th, 2025 council meeting. B, amend resolution CS 2025-133 by replacing item 2AV with, quote, receive building permits for any buildings or structures found to be within the riparian area, end of quote. And in item 2B, changing the required completion date of remedial actions listed in all item 2 to 240 days. And C, confirm continued support for resolution CS 2025-133 as amended.
Okay, we'll move on to our 2026 financial plan. Budget discussions. Get back to that page. Okay, the recommendation that council approve the following schedule to deliberate the 2026 to 2030 financial plan. September 2nd, Parks, Recreation and Culture, operating and 2026 capital and direction. September 16th, direction for permissive tax exemptions. November 4th, water and sewer, operating and capital. November 25th, introduction of general operations. December 2nd, introduction of general capital projects, water and sewer rate bylaws introduced. And December 16th, anticipated adoption of water and sewer rate bylaws and early budget approvals. I get a motion? Councillor Stevens and seconded by Councillor Mackay. And any discussion? Councillor Gurley?
Thank you. Through to staff, what was our budget increase percentage for last year? Sorry.
Can I please get back to you on
Yeah,
that?
yeah. You know, I would, because I'm happy with all the dates and the schedule, and I'm eager to have the conversations and have the public input, etc. I'm wondering about that phrase near the end of the report where it says, should council wish to keep the budget at a set percentage increase, council could provide a budget mandate at this time, which staff will work towards. And I guess I'd put it to my colleagues, do we feel like we want to work within a set percentage, or do you want to just kind of see how things roll out over the period of discussion?
I will mention here that this recently came up at the CVRD. At that meeting, it was initially recommended that we hold staff to a 2.5% budget increase, which caused no shortage of conniptions by staff, who then came back to us and advised that they felt that the very minimum that they could even attempt to reach was 4%. So I just thought I would put that out there as discussion fodder. So any further discussion? Councillor Patterson?
Just a couple. On the September 2nd one, Parks, Recreation, Culture, is that just the FJCC portion, or is that the whole Parks, Recreation and Culture?
Through the chair, that would just be the regional rec, so just FJCC's facility.
Okay. The second part, what happens if in our deliberations on the budget and we request either a set amount, which I don't think we should do at this time until we start getting some information, but if we do that or we carry on and start getting staff to do more delving into numbers and stuff, and we can't meet those dates that we have here, is that, do we have to bring this all back, or can we just kind of fluff it?
So if we give you a specific rate to aim at and you come back and tell us that you need more time that we're not going to make these dates, will this entire thing have to be redone, or can it just be amended down the line as necessary?
Right now, if we are just going to be presenting, the budget packages would be going out to the directors to do, except for FJCC. That one's pretty much done at this point in time. So if there is a set amount that council wishes to direct us to work towards, then that would be the mandate going out to all the departments. Should a department not be able to meet that, then we would bring back the higher service level requests or additional items that to highlight that we're not going to make the mandated amount, and then it would be up to council to either cut a service or change the number.
Okay. Can I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you? I wasn't sure you had your hand kind of, I didn't know if it was up or not. Okay. Any further discussion?
Well, I would suggest that we aim at 4.5. That's a little more than the regional district is doing, because I think that we've got a little bit more going on that we need to cover. But I think that would be still provide a really ambitious goal for staff, because it is we're in a cost of living pinch crisis, if you will. So that's the number I would put out there. What do you think?
Okay. Do we have a seconder for that motion? Oh, Councillor.
It might be best if we We voted on the first one and then started a second motion.
Okay, all right. So the first is just the dates. So any further discussion? All those in favor? None opposed, motion carries. And then can we just go into the second, or do we have to add that to new business?
No, you can just start with the second
Okay.
motion.
So then we have a request
Yeah,
for
I
a
would
motion
move
by
that
Councillor
we
Gurley.
direct staff to prepare a budget of 4.5% increase for next fiscal year.
Okay, seconder? Okay. We need a seconder. Okay, so Councillor Jacobson seconding that. Discussion, Councillor Mackay.
Thank you. I guess this is through to staff. It's unfortunately we don't know the amount from last year. I can't remember from the report. Do we know what the increases are, QP interests or increases are this year? That's our biggest union. Do we have any sense of what that is at this time?
In the report, it stated that we don't have any knowledge yet. They're in negotiations, but that a current QP
Was
close
5%.
to us went up by 5%.
Right.
So-
That's I'm remembering it now.
Yeah.
Okay. 5%. Okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, I'll call the question.
I don't think it was seconded.
Oh, yeah, Councillor Jacobson seconded it. Yeah. That's why we're discussing it. Okay, all those in favor? Oh, okay. Sorry, we'll rescind that.
I just want to make sure that we're doing the right thing here. In the event that it's not possible to stick with that without deep cuts, I would hope that we would be included in a conversation along the way around the budgets. Is that reasonable? Or are we going to just, like, I know that we see certain parts of the budget at certain times. That's what the dates are around. If it's possible to have an overview sooner than we get into the deep conversations that would indicate that it's going to be impossible to do without deep cuts, I would like to be able to have the conversation because, like you said, we're in a precarious economic situation right now worldwide. I don't want to. I want to make sure that we can be part of the conversation. Can I put that through to staff?
Sorry, I was just doing a calculation there. Could you repeat the question?
Oh, just in the event that 4.5%, for instance, is
Unattainable?
unattainable without deep cuts before the budget was, because what happens is we see the budget after staff have put together their best effort to a certain, and if we're keeping them to a certain amount, I'm just worried that that will be, especially if employment costs are going up so drastically, and all the other things to consider around costs, increases in costs that are global. I just want to make sure that there's a point at which we could have this conversation again before all the final sort of budget proposals are put in.
As through the chair, as information comes back from each of the departments, we will bring it back to council to discuss the items for sure. I can just tell you that last year's budget increase, which is different from a tax increase, I just want to make sure that everybody is aware of that budget increase was 5.06%.
Okay. Any further discussion? Councillor Stevens.
Yeah, as politically tempting as it maybe is to name a number, I think we'd be sending staff down a road of finding cuts that might not be the cuts that we want to make. I think it's more efficient to know what the budget is, and then we go into it and say we're willing to sacrifice this, but not this. I also think there's just too much uncertainty between QP 401 and QP 606. We don't know those numbers yet. We've got the BC Hydro rate, which is not insignificant, and the RCMP member cost that's not insignificant. So 4.5 might be naive or maybe not when you prorate those numbers to the budget. And I also think That's something, a lesson we've learned over and over again, is that if you got a capital project, the cheapest time to do is today. So it's false economy to say, oh, it's a bad economic time, it'll be better next year, and then next year it's 30% more, and everyone ends up paying more. So I'd like to know all as much information and then say, I'll make the sacrifices here, or I would like, my input would be to make the sacrifices here, as opposed to say, cut it to this, and then staff comes back and we say, well, why'd you cut that? Why'd you cut that? It seems we'll get there faster if we just find out what we need to do and what it would cost, and then make the judgment calls. Thank you.
Councillor Jacobson.
Through to staff, and I'm sorry, it's just flown out of my brain right now. What is our contribution for the ecom costs in the upcoming budget? Do you know that off the top of your head? I'm sorry to like spray and pray for answers.
In the 2026 budget, because we're still working through the first year of that contract, so it would be increased in, I think, another $50,000.
Okay,
Is that correct?
so that's going to be an increase that's sort of baked in.
Yeah, that would be another increase for sure.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion does not carry. Okay, moving on to 4.3 revitalization tax exemption for 41st Ave. Recommendation that council approve entering into a revitalization tax exemption agreement with First Avenue Freeholders Corporation for the property located at 440 First Avenue, folio 0204.000, and direct staff to amend Town of Ladysmith Revitalization Tax Exemption Bylaw 2007, number 1625, by adding a provision that no further applications will be considered after August 5th, 2025. Can I get a motion? Councillor Stevens and seconded Councillor Patterson. Discussion? Councillor Mackay?
And I'm just looking to clarify my understanding. In this one, we're talking about tax exemption for retaining the heritage look in the town. So we're talking about the facade and also sprinkling systems. Is that correct? So the tax exemption would be on those two items, not the entire building. Is that correct?
Through to staff.
At this time, we have requested that BC Assessment isolate just the facade value of it. But when an exemption comes through, it is the entire property. Hence why is a request that we put a hold onto this bylaw after this last application is deliberated.
So can I just clarify? Sorry, I'm not sure. So if we approve this, it would be on the entire building, not just the facade?
Through the chair, request has gone to BC Assessment to do all the evaluations. That's where it would be, and we would work with the assessor to do that. I just have not received confirmation of what the valuation change is going to be, if they even have isolated the valuation for just the facade versus the rest of the property.
So should we then table this until we get that information? Or if we pass it and they don't come back with that information, have we then given them an exemption for the entire building?
At this point in time, they have satisfied the requirements of the bylaw that is in place.
So we don't have any ability to deny it. It's just whether we can restrict it.
I don't want to speak for BC Assessment, but I am willing that they are a good partner to work with. That they will understand what the intention of this program bylaw was, and that they would work towards that.
Okay, all right. Does that clarify that for you, Councillor McKay? Councillor Patterson?
Can we separate these into two motions, please?
I think absolutely, yeah. So just at this moment, dealing with 4.31. Okay. Councillor Gurley?
We've thrown around some terminology like exempting the entire building, but my understanding of this program is that it exempts the difference. So you have the pre-renovation appraised value and then the post-renovation, and the program allows you to pay that pre-renovation, and so it's tiered up. Is that right?
Correct. Essentially freezes with the assessment.
Yeah. So it really encourages that revitalization. Doesn't mean the building's tax free or exempt. Yeah. But I also, yeah. All right. Yeah.
Any further discussion? Okay, I'll call the question on 4.3.1. All those in favor? None opposed, motion carries. We'll then move on to 4.3.2. Direct staff to amend the Town of Ladysmith revitalization tax exemption bylaw by adding provision that no further applications be considered after August 5th, 2025. Can I get a motion? Councillor Jacobson, seconded. Councillor Stevens. Any discussion? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you. I do realize that there is a cost to the community with this program, but we just had a presentation by the gentleman representing college and economic development, et cetera, and we have seen absolutely, other than this building, absolutely nothing happening in the community. And unless we can incentivize, and there is other ones out there, but we don't have anything happening in the community right now. And by further throwing a black cloud out there, I don't think we're going to have anything happening anytime soon. So I don't think this is a good idea. I think it leaves a bad mark and would possibly discourage people from wanting to make any improvements whatsoever. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens.
Yeah, so this bylaw has been around for 23 years and it has been, according to the staff report, used exactly twice. And we've had more than 2 buildings revitalized. I'm happy, you know, I'll I wasn't going to say much tonight. I was passing number 1 with a bad taste in my mouth because T's were crossed and I's were dotted. I'm exuberant about passing number 2. This is regressive. It passes on people who have sort of the more money you have to invest, the more money you're pawning off on other taxpayers because the permission of tax exemption money has to come from somewhere. So I'm happy to see it go, and I think the proof's in the pudding that the uptake in it has been really next to nothing, and only very recently. And I think you see this in a lot of incentive programs, that it tends to be the people who have the capacity to take advantage of it, and smaller players don't. So I'm happy to vote in favor of August 5th being the last time it's used. Thank you.
Councillor Mackay.
Thank you. I appreciate Councillor Patterson's point, but at the same time, all things considered, with the lack of use on this, I don't think this particular tax exemption bylaw is inspiring changes downtown. I think I don't know that it's actually having an impact, and I don't think it would hold back someone who was ready to pull the trigger on redeveloping a property. I don't think it would hold them back from doing it. It is not a big enough part of the equation from what I can see. If it was, people would be falling over themselves to access it. So that doesn't seem to be happening. So I would be voting in favor of this. Thank you.
Councillor Jacobson.
Yeah, to support what Councillor Mackay and Councillor Stevens has said, I'll be supporting this. I'm actually looking forward to having this moved on from, and perhaps this gives a little motivation for us to have conversation about a way that we can maybe bring something in that is a little bit more of incentivizing than what this program has been.
Councillor Patterson.
Maybe instead of drop kicking this right now, maybe we should come up with something that could replace it in a better way, but still hang on to some incentives. And it's, it might encourage people that aren't the richest in the world to do something in town. and some people to fix up their buildings. So I think right now, if we want to encourage, why are we going to discourage? Let's fix it first.
Any further discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. 4.4 Revitalization Tax Exemption 101 Gladden Road. Recommendation that council approve entering into a revitalization tax exemption agreement economic with Western Forest Products for the property located at 101 Gladden Road, folio 0904 decimal 000, and 2, direct staff to amend the language in Town of Ladysmith Revitalization Tax Exemption Economic Revitalization Bylaw 2012 number 1807 to require an application to be received at the time of a building permit. Can I get a motion? Councillor Patterson, seconded. Councillor
No, I was
Stevens.
going to make a completely different motion.
Oh, okay. Seconded by Councillor Mackay. Discussion? Councillor Stevens.
Thank. So I was, and I'll argue my point in the middle of this motion. I'm again, T's have been crossed, I's have been dotted. I would be supportive of number one because our process has been followed. Having said that, our process has revealed inherent problems in it. First one, as mentioned in the staff report, is that because our bylaw had no provision to stop applications coming in after the building permit, the whole idea of it being an incentive goes out the window. This is a bonus. It's not an incentive. This went ahead and was like making money. And now here we are 2 years later, started giving out a permissive tax exemption. The other thing is that, and this is a small class, but an important class of property tax, it beggars its tax class colleagues. The other 3 members of this class, we're going to have to reallot this. And so the bigger problem of reallotting permissive tax exemptions to the whole population becomes a microcosm of that bigger problem. So I don't think it's a good policy in that sense. I would argue the same point that it tends to be a regressive form of incentive versus the more capacity you have, the more advantage of it you're able to take. So I don't think, and again, it's been around for less time, but the uptake has not been, it's probably less stellar pound for pound than the one that we just got rid of. So I would support number one, giving it out because they've followed the process, but I would point out that our process is highly flawed, and I think putting it to bed in November would be the best way to do it. So I can't support the motion unless it's separated presently as it is, but I would suggest that we maybe want to go down that road if it is defeated. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councillor Mackay.
I appreciate Councillor Stevens' point of view. I feel that this is an economic revitalization exemption, tax exemption. I feel as though this is perhaps the wrong time to be messing with it. I agree that it needs to be activated at the beginning. It's a big question for me why it wasn't activated at the beginning of when this project was happening. It's odd. But I don't think it's necessary to take it away at this point. I think with this one we could hang on to it and see do we have any feedback on how many times this one's been accessed since it's been in place through the staff?
Through the chair, there's currently the Medill building has the exemption, and that was one that was changed before they applied to allow it to be a 10-year. Before that, it was where the Ladysmith Motorsports is. That building got a 5-year when the program originally came out. And that's it.
But those are big economic entities in our community. I think I will be voting in favor of the motion as it sits. Thank you.
Councillor Patterson.
If we pass number 2, the properties on the west side of Rocky Creek Road, there's 5 lots there. that I believe are before us or before staff, would they be able to access this, or by excluding it, would they be not granted the exemption? I can't remember the numbers, but they're just around the corner. So it'd be, well, 11:30, so it'd be 11:31 or something.
There is a designated schedule that it would be, if they're on that map, then they would be eligible to get the exemption. The other part was just adding if the exemption request could come at the same time as a building permit. It was just, those are the marriages that we're trying to make right there.
Okay.
It's not getting rid of this program per se. That is an option, is one of the alternatives, but staff are just recommending to tighten up the language. So I do not know if that property that you are talking about is in the map or not. I would have to look into it and get back to you.
I can't really.
I think just to clarify, I think what the actual question is if somebody currently has already submitted a building permit but has not accessed this but could be eligible for it, if we pass this, would that then exempt them from being able to come back, being that, you know, they're caught kind of in the middle?
Staff would look at those at any application that's coming in. We are also up against BC assessments deadlines to make sure that their role is complete, and that is on October 31st. So all the steps have to be put in place and bylaws adopted before October 31st. That's kind of why we're pushing these items right now. So if there's something that's in the works and it hasn't been completed, then yes, staff could absorb that one. But again, it would probably be going into the 2027 tax roll because of the timing.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Stevens?
If I'm reading it right, and I think this is germane to the budget discussion we had about setting percentages and such, you know, this class, it's a substantial amount of cash and then not substantial percentage of the tax base. I really think we're gonna start messing around with this, and our own good policy of not putting all our eggs in one basket and having a large tax entity leave, and they're a huge portion of our taxation, and we get in a jam. I think we're going to have to slide that way slightly if we're going to make this adjustment and leave the door open to sliding that way even more towards residential and smaller commercial, taking up the slack if we're leaving this loophole open. So again, just food for thought. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councillor Gurley?
I am troubled by the effect that it has on the other class members. Is there any way that their exemption can kind of be calculated so it starts now and then it ramps up later instead of retroactively? Could that be a possibility?
Through the chair. So the majority assessment class in this area is class 4, major industry. There's only 4 properties that are major industry, and they're all owned by the same person or same group. So one exemption is going to come up, the other are going to be absorbing it. This is a policy for we're getting confused between the policy for exemption and then the policy for the financial plan. When I bring back the financial plan, I will ask council if you wish to then still target only the set percentage to come from that class. We can do those calculations at that point and then say, no, we don't want that class to be as reliant on the assessment. And then it's the other classes that will be picking up that tax burden. So it's a shifting, because this one has come in after the fact. We have already utilized that new construction in reducing the overall taxation. So that's why there will be a bump up to the other classes should this exemption go through. But again, that discussion will come through at the financial plan discussions.
Okay, I'll call the question. We haven't had any request to separate them. We're currently, nobody's requested that we actually separate them at this point, I don't think.
Through the chair, I believe Councillor Stevens might have made a kind of a comment that he would like that.
Okay.
No, I'm fine voting against both.
Okay. I heard him commenting, but it didn't actually say I want to, so I didn't take that as an actual request for an amendment. So you have to say amendment. Okay, so we'll call the question. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Yeah. Okay, bylaws for introduction. 5.1.1, Town of Ladysmith Streets and Traffic Bylaw 1998, number 1309. Amendment. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, through the chair, that has been removed from tonight's agenda.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Yep. My bad. I forgot to cross it out. Okay. 5.1.2, Town of Ladysmith Election and Assent Voting Bylaw 2018, number 1964, Amendment Bylaw 2025, number 2217. Recommendation that Council give first, second, and third readings to Town of Ladysmith Election and Assent Voting Bylaw 2018, number 1964, Amendment Bylaw 2025, number 2217. I get a motion. Councillor Stevens, seconded Councillor Gurley. Any discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? None opposed. Motion carries. 5.2.1, Town of Ladysmith Zoning Bylaw 2014, number 1860, Amendment Bylaw 2025, number 2213. Recommendation that Council adopt Town of Ladysmith Zoning Bylaw 2014, number 1860, Amendment Bylaw 2025, number 2213. Councillor Jacobson and Councillor Stevens. Any discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? None opposed. Motion carries. And okay. Then we move on to new business. 6.1, Gruel Road intersection. Councillor Gurley. Did you want to introduce that, Councillor Gurley?
Would you like me to read the recommendation?
Sure.
You want to do that? Okay. I'd like to move that council direct staff to write a letter on behalf of council to the Ministry of Transportation and Transit, requesting that the ministry undertake an assessment of the Gruel Road / Trans-Canada Highway intersection and explore potential engineering improvements. So I'll move it.
So I'm cautiously optimistic. If the Binney report that we have in front of us, which is a couple of years old, but if the ministry is receptive to their own consultant reports, it does note that if there's no light needed there, unless there's considerable traffic that would detour from Highway 1 to Ludlow Road, first intersection at the end, yada, yada, yada. So I'm hopeful maybe that the Christie Road development, and my colleagues will maybe remember that awesome meeting where we talked about closing the road and such to make a point. I'm cautiously optimistic that they're willing to look at it. The next paragraph they talk about, I think it's from the description, it's restricting it to a right in, right out, and possibly a T intersection depending on platooning effects on Ludlow. I'd also throw in a third option, just closing it. I don't know I think we've got to have a significant improvement, not lipstick. And so I would put that out there as a possibility if the improvements are less than a light or less than a significant T intersection and infrastructure that actually improves the situation. I don't think I've ever used that turn. I know Councillor Goulet lives there. I know Councillor Patterson does early in the morning. You did live there. But it scares the hell out of me. So I'm happy to see anything done, but I would put that out there if consideration of just simply closing it if that were cheap and didn't reduce the level of service in other areas. Thank you.
Councillor Greeley?
Yeah, thank you. And the reason that I brought this up is because I passed the accident there the Sunday before last, and 2 vehicles were just mangled beyond recognition. It was an incredibly graphic scene. And the first responders were doing a great job of managing the scenario. But then, since then we've heard from the RCMP that this is an area of their advocacy. So I'm hoping to add a little bit of political advocacy as well as that kind of RCMP, in addition to that RCMP angle, and get some safety improvements made because I don't know, it's just very obvious that it's a dangerous intersection. And they did a report 6 years ago now, but you can just Google that intersection and find many articles over the years of devastating accidents there. And I'd like to see something done.
Councillor Jacobson?
This is just in response to what Councillor Stevens brought up about closing that road. There are active logging trucks that come through that. I think it would be really difficult to reroute those. So I don't think I can support that. But I wanted to say thank you to Councillor Gourlay for bringing this forward. And I really hope that we see some improvements because that I don't even know what to call it, that yard sale of a exit entrance turning lanes is it's I can't believe it's still there.
Any further discussion? Councillor Mackay?
And I guess what I just want to point out is that the motion is asking for engineering improvements, and I'm assuming that if we put it to the powers that be, that they will find the best solution for it, all things considered, looking at the history and so on. So I'm happy leaving it as it is. Thank you.
Councillor Patterson?
If we leave it up to highways to do something about it, my bet is that they'll close it and run all that heavy traffic through the community. So I think that when we do send a letter, hopefully we put in there that closing is not an option because there is a lot of heavy traffic. And when Rocky Creek Road was rebuilt or done by highways when they did the improvements back in 95 or something, I believe there was a load restriction or restriction put on Rocky Creek Road, so I'm not too sure what kind of heavy equipment can go down there. But if we leave it to highways, they're going to do the quickest, cheapest, and to hell with the community approach. So it cannot be closed.
Okay. I'm going to interject as well that just knowing I use that route all the time, especially coming into the right, and I know a lot of people that live out there. And the obvious would be for people to come in through town, go up, and then be speeding down 2nd Avenue and, trying to get back out to so I think it would be, kind of devastating for some of our quieter streets if we did do that. The same thing for people coming out trying to, just come into town, go back out and hit the light. Most of the people that I know that live there do actually already come into town and use the light to get out on the highway when they're heading north. They do use it for right in and right out. I think that would be my preferred recommendation to go to Moti, is to allow the traffic that can safely access that. Basically like we've got South Davis Road right now, I think is the same kind of situation. So, Councillor Patterson.
Also, if there was, and I know the RCMP are trying, but if there was more highway patrol on there, because when I pull out at 6:30 in the morning and turn left, the traffic heading north are doing 100, 120. So, and that is a big part of the accident scene. Yep. So not just highways, but more patrols.
Okay. Any further discussion? did you want to ask an amendment to the, to keep, to keep the road open?
I
Because
guess
as it stands, it's just tasked them to do an assessment, and it's not specifying that in the assessment where our preferred solution is to keep the road open.
or come up with a solution where it does not direct that traffic through the community. So whether keep the road open or go the other way and come out at Bush Creek and Oyster Stolo, but that ain't gonna happen either. So, sure, to keep that road open, so for industrial traffic. Yeah, but then they've got to turn.
Yeah, if we've, that actually doesn't, yeah, okay, all right, so,
Maybe if I can just
yeah.
respond to that.
Okay,
The reason that I chose this language, it's directly lifted from the RCMP's letter. So
okay.
it's just aligning with exactly what they're advocating
Okay.
for. And then we'll let the ministry or their consultant or whatever
Right.
do the analysis.
Okay, so that being said, I will call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries. And we'll move on to 6.2, request for reconsideration of denied water leak bill adjustment, account number 00010302220-000. For reference, at the July 8th meeting, Council passed the following resolution, CS 2025-180, that Council provide an adjustment to water billing account number 00010302220-000 for the fourth quarter of 2024 and the first quarter of 2025 in the amount of $3,000. The motion was carried. It has been requested that this item be brought back for reconsideration. Councillor, are you?
Councillor Gourlay, yes. I'll move that
Okay.
I'd like to move that we provide the full exemption or full cancellation of that billing period difference or whatever we're going to do.
Okay.
And I'll speak to it if I may.
Can I get a seconder first? Thank you. Councillor Jacobson. Okay, carry on.
So in the last meeting when we discussed this, I advocated pretty strongly against providing the full reimbursement or whatever. And that was based on some assumptions that I made with the information that we had. And I was later informed that those assumptions were wrong because the information was wrong. And I feel badly. I'm sorry to the homeowner for the assumptions that I made there. And I see, having looked at the situation more fully, I don't see any indication that there was, I see every indication that the owner took due diligence and did their best to conform with the instructions. And we had a few other things come up with the contractor and snow and so on. And I think that this solution was attempted in all good faith, and I would be happy to provide that full reimbursement or cancellation.
Councillor Stevens?
Yeah, I've in thinking much like Councillor Gourlay, the greatest strength of our forgiveness system is that it's completely anonymous. We only get the meter number. No one can say that's my neighbor or anything like that. The greatest weakness is we don't get any context. And there's certainly an element of context in this. And so we went, as Councillor Gourlay said, we went with the paper we had. The paper was inaccurate, and so I'm perfectly happy to rescind the resolution that we passed and to pass a new one allowing a full rebate of the cost incurred. Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? I will call the question. Do we need to actually? So we're going to change to a full restitution of the amount.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just want to double check. So Councillor Gourlay moved that and it was seconded by
Councillor Jacobson.
By Councillor Jacobson. Okay. So I think in this case, to be cleaner, it would be better to rescind the previous one so that it doesn't look like they received two two
We're not going to
amounts.
give them the $3,000 too?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
All right. So we will introduce a motion to rescind or defeat the prior, rescind or defeat?
rescind. So would you like me to just help?
Sure.
So that council rescind resolution CS 2025-179 and provide the full water leak adjustment amount of $6,308.31 for account number 000-103-0220-000.
Okay.
That would work.
All right. Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Gurley. And any further discussion? All those in favor? None opposed, motion carries. Okay. And that takes us on to question period. This is a 15-minute opportunity for Ladysmith residents, property owners, or business operators to ask brief questions related to items on tonight's agenda. Please begin by stating your name and address. Questions should be directed through the chair and answers given likewise. No debates or discussion with individual council members or staff will take place during this time. Please note, and no commitments shall be made by the chair in replying to a question, and matters which may require action from the council will be referred to future meeting of council.
Thank you. Robert Johnson, 526 First Avenue. Two questions, one pertaining to agenda item 5.1. In the documentation, it makes reference to sidewalks, but we're talking about also the patios that are in the parking stalls. Does it pertain to the parking stalls as per se?
That item was removed from the agenda, and it will be discussed at a
Okay,
later.
fair enough. The other one is 3.3-1.
Sorry, 3.3-1?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
the one in regards to the Islander Hotel. And you granted the exemption. Is there any indication how much that exemption will work out to in dollars?
We are waiting for further information from BC Assessment to clarify whether that is going to be based on the facade of the building or whether it's going to be on the improvements. So until we get that information back from BC Assessment, we can't make
How
that.
will the public know what the assessment or the adjustment's going to be?
You could send in a request,
Okay.
an FOI.
Under 4.3-2, it says there'll be no further applications taken to that bylaw, but there's no time, date, or replacements. Have you have any idea what you would like to do?
It was discussed and brought up that council would like to look further at options to encourage renovations and improvements to our historical downtown, but that we need to look further into the best way of doing that. So I think that'll probably come up.
Is it possible to get a time frame?
As soon as we can get it onto an agenda.
Thank you. And on 4.4.1, you approved that. The effective dates. One of the questions I have is the reason for that was to create employment. With these exemptions, is there any analysis to see if there is an increase in employment in the area, or is it just increasing the profitability of the operation?
In this regard, it's an exemption for the improvement,
right,
for the company investing in maintaining the employment or possibly increasing the employment here. This allows them to continue being profitable and continue. So it's not so much that it's going to cost the town money that we're already receiving. It's just that we may not realize money on the improvements.
Yeah. The question is basically, is there been studies of correlation? If the exemption, does it relate in jobs, and how does that?
We can certainly.
That's what the point of the bylaw was.
Yeah.
Was to.
We can certainly request that information from Western Forest Products.
And the last part was I didn't see anything in the motion. It didn't specifically relate to the changes in the levels. In the backup report, it says it would go from 200,000 to $300,000, so 5-year exemption, and 2.5 million to 5 million for the 10 years. But that was not in the motion. What is the status of that?
I would have to check with staff on
Okay.
to find out what the status. But
Good.
our time is up.
It's not 15 minutes. But
No,
thank you
but you
anyways.
only get 3. See if somebody else, you can come back up, but we have to allow somebody else the opportunity. Any further questions? No?
Hi, I'm T, Fifth Avenue, Ladysmith. There's a big confusion here regarding the Economic Realization Bylaw 2012-1807 and the other one of 2007-1625. Aren't they the same?
One is a heritage revitalization meant to encourage the improvements to heritage buildings. The other one is an economic to encourage businesses to make economic improvements to their businesses that will allow them to remain competitive, to remain vital, and to continue to operate. So
Okay.
they're 2 different classifications.
And these are taxi we will get back later on because they're operating in the community.
Exactly.
Then I will ask regarding the 1625, will that account for everybody living on this side of town in the old miners' houses? Can they apply for the same thing, tax exemption?
If they're in a heritage building, it can actually that's been rescinded. Yeah. So it's
Sorry,
currently we're going to be looking at options to encourage the renovations and revitalization of heritage buildings. As of now, we're not feeling that this is probably the best vehicle, so we're going to be having discussions to try and find a better way of bringing it about.
I got that, but what is classified as a heritage building?
To the best of my knowledge, is any building that's classified as a heritage building. It can be or identified as a heritage building. So
Sorry,
yeah.
now
Yeah, there are zones and there are maps and there are classifications and you
it is.
you can request to have a building designated as a heritage building, and they look at the possible value of that building to the community and whether it fits the criteria of a heritage building.
Yeah, so because we come back to the tax exemption where we're going to increase now the taxes with 5% or 4.5% next year, and then we're going to give a tax exemption for big businesses and new renovations of a heritage building. It doesn't fall in good soil here.
It's a balancing act. We want to encourage our industry to make improvements, but and it's not really giving them, like, it's not giving them an exemption on their property that they're at. It's giving them an exception on the improvements that they're making. So they're making huge investments in their businesses. This gives them an exemption on the improved value due to that. So it's
Is this only for 1 year, or is it for several years
it's
ahead?
for 10 years,
10 years.
but it's a declining amount.
Yeah.
So
I wish I knew this.
yeah. And
thank you.
That's the end of your time. Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, that being said, I will move on to adjournment. Sorry. Pardon? Oh, okay. And, okay. All in favor? And motion carries. Okay.
Yeah.